All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers, but more importantly, welcome to everybody around the world, no matter what country you're from, no matter what country you might be in. Welcome to everybody who might be in Israel listening, and that probably not many people will. But this video, the topic is very important, so I urge you to hear it out. Now, there's a lot of different things I want to talk about. I don't have a script, so I'm just gonna let you know my hair is poking up there. Um, I'm just gonna let it come to me. So the first thing is I don't speak fluent Hebrew, right? But it's Tisha B'Av. Okay, this date marks when the first and second temples were destroyed. Okay, now it's not a conspiracy or a theory that the enemies of Israel will attack on this special date. It's special for bad reasons, but you know what I mean. It's not just a theory or a conspiracy theory. The threats, I'm pretty sure that the opposing nations had actually made those threats, but in any way, in any case, Israel's intelligence and all of that there, and I was just checking all the latest updates. They still have their own security measures and warnings for the Israeli public in place, and they're going on the notion that there will be an attack on Tisha B'Av. So whether the enemy nations did announce that they would do that, or it was this talk, in either case, the effect is that Israel is prepared and ready and pretty much expecting that to occur. Now, we know from the prophecy of Ezekiel and even Zechariah that a big attack will occur, and welcome. It will occur at some point. It's inevitable, right? Nobody knows exactly when it will happen and exactly what it will entail, besides what the prophecy says, that they've already started attacking Israel, so that part's already started, but Jerusalem, okay? Now, one might think, why would they want to attack Jerusalem? You know what I mean? They may not bomb it and this and that there because of the special structures that even they believe are special. So it might just be they do a ground invasion and avoid destroying the holy buildings and so forth, and the Dome of the Rock and whatever else, right? That's special and holy to them, and other sites that are, the Temple Mount still holy, and whatever else, right? You know what I mean? So that's one possibility, okay? And if I'm not mistaken, they have threatened. I'm not putting words in people's mouths, but I believe that they have threatened to do an attack similar to October 7th, which was more like ground based. There is also discussion that they could do an onslaught like was done in April of this year, where they launched hundreds of rockets or missiles at Israel all at one time to overwhelm the Iron Dome. They could just do a mixed bag. Who knows what they will do, right? In a sense, it doesn't really matter what they're going to do because we can't read their minds. We won't know what happens until it happens, right? So it's best to consider all scenarios and weigh them out, right? I think they're probably going to do a ground attack, and I'm not going to claim to know when they're going to do it, right? But the evidence points to that it could very well happen on Tisha B'Av. That's from August 12th to August 13th, okay? So we're in it now, depending where you are in the world, right? In Israel, they're far forward from where I am in terms of time, so it's even further, but there's still time left to Tisha B'Av, okay? So it could very well occur at this point. They might even, the opposing nations might decide to, hey, let's surprise them afterwards, right? So everybody just needs to be prepared. But in all seriousness, it could happen today, tonight, depending where you live in the world, what time it is for you. You could go to bed, you could wake up, and they started some attack, right? Not that my gut feeling matters, but my gut tells me we're not going to wake up tomorrow to some attack happening on Tisha B'Av, right? But I don't speak for the future. I don't know what it holds, right? But we have, in all sensibility, we should be prepared. I mean, nobody is. Even people who believe that the Gog Magog prophecy and all that is unfolding and at the end is imminent, Messiah and God are imminent. Even people who believe that, I don't think any of us are ready. I don't speak for everybody, but I think most people are we're so casual and flippant about everything now that, it could be the eve of the very start of the end times, but we're all just so flippant about everything. So we have to be prepared though. Okay. So I would urge everybody, okay, everybody, no matter if you're Jewish, Christian, anybody, Muslim, anybody, absolutely anybody, on these days, especially right now, and generally always, but especially on these days, don't be doing any sins, anything whatsoever. Because I can tell you one thing. If, if the end did suddenly occur, okay, and I don't mean like the end imminently, like abruptly, instantaneously. They're going to launch an attack on Israel and Jerusalem, and at some point, God will arrive with Messiah. Who's to say it's going to be instantaneous, right? It could take days, weeks, or months. We don't know, right? But the point is that it's going to start, right? Now, if you're sinning and it does start, and it happens to be quite soon thereafter, and you only had these few days, your last days before you get judged at the great judgment day, that would be pretty bad to just throw that away by sinning flippantly during these days. So I would urge everybody to avoid sin. Certainly, trust me on that. I'm only smiling because I know that everybody's so casual. There's like, meh. But seriously, like, don't take it for granted. Like, I don't represent the Israeli Defense Forces and all of that, but they're telling the public, no, stick to the original plan, which was expect an attack on Tisha B'Av by Thursday. So they are anticipating that attack will happen by Thursday. Now, I don't know Israel's time and calendar offhand. Maybe Thursday is still Tisha B'Av, or maybe it's the day after. You know what I mean? But for these days, let's especially not be doing any sin. Not that you should be doing it anyways, but especially on these days. You know what I mean? And be prepared because it could very well happen. And the other thing that, this whole conflict, war, whatever you want to call it, just got a lot more serious because I've been following all the updates as every time I look down at the news and I go search through different news, every half hour, whatever it might be. And I've been watching the updates, and it's just been announced that the U.S. has sent over a guided missile submarine over to the Middle East to assist Israel in this, and a battleship, an aircraft carrier, sorry. So that does one of two things. Number one, it shows the enemy nations of Israel that, oh, America's joining this now. So it's no longer just between Israel and them, it's between America, Israel, and them. That means if missiles are going to get launched, they could be launching different directions across the planet now. That makes it more like a world war. Okay? Now, I'm not going to say a peep about Russia, right? But I don't know their stance in this right now. I know that them and Iran have some type of like exchange of like arms or something like that. But I actually heard in the news today someone was defending it from a legal perspective and said actually there's no like what they're doing was on the books legally beforehand, before this. And I can't remember the way they termed it, but they had like a legalist type or like a lawyer's perspective, like they knew law very well. And they said, actually, no, they're not doing anything like, corrupt or anything in this here. It's not like they're doing arms deals with Iran because they hate Israel. It's just because they did that before. And, it's on the books, and what they're doing isn't, it's not illegal or unethical or whatever it might be. So that was that person's defense, but that was on the news. So I'm not going to accuse Russia of taking any sides in this war, right? I'm just leaving them out. And all those other countries around there too, China. I'm not going to jump into theory bandwagons until there's more evidence for it, right? But right now, we certainly know what enemy nations have threatened to and have already attacked Israel. That's without a doubt, right? And we certainly know now, because it's been announced, that America sent over a submarine and an aircraft carrier. So, I don't, and even some of the news outlets have mentioned the term World War III a few times now. They didn't do that, like weeks ago, but now it's becoming more serious. So, if a war or conflict is just between two nations, Russia and Ukraine is a good example, right? Even though at the start everybody thought, oh, this is going to be a world war, everybody's going to join in. All the other countries like America, this and that, there, NATO, and this and that, there, everybody watched their P's and Q's and treaded carefully. And so far, Russia, Ukraine hasn't broken out into like a big global war with all these different countries joining in to fight against either Ukraine or Russia, right? Everybody kind of watched their P's and Q's and stayed around the fence as, Russia and Ukraine battled it out. There is help going on, but the nations haven't jumped all in. I forgot why I was giving that example. It might come back to me, but that's an example of, oh, that's why. Because if it's just left up to two nations like that in that example, and everybody else stays out, past the fence, they don't get too involved to escalate it on a global level. As long as it's just between two nations, then it's not going to spread out and escalate. But the moment one other nation comes in, right, especially a few, but the moment one other nation steps in, then it's like a tripod, and that tripod needs another leg, and then you're just going to keep adding legs to it. Other nations are going to join in because there's a reason to, or they have an alliance with somebody. You know what I mean? It's never just going to be three. If you have a battle between two, and as long as it sticks to two, that's all it will be. But as soon as you throw in a third, and especially like a fourth, you're just going to end up with lots and lots of other nations getting pulled in, and it's going to be a world war. Right? So we could very well be on the brink of a World War III. Not that I want it to be like this. I just want, God and Messiah to come here and make the world a better place or take us to a better world, whatever it might be. I just want a positive outcome to this. That's all I want. But at the end of the day, we have to be realistic, and none of this is foofy theories and stuff. None of this is imagination. This is all real stuff happening in the news tangibly now, and nothing that I've said is theory. I've just offered opinions of what I think they might do. I don't think they're going to blow up the Dome of the Rock. I mean, why would they blow up or launch missiles at Jerusalem? They could, right? The other thing I want to mention is that I think too many people are judging these enemy nations as rationally thought out in their plans. Now, I'm not saying they're always irrational, but things that they have done have been highly irrational, such as October 7th, right? To be so barbarically violent, just right out of the blue, like not even along the normal lines of, hey, we feel that you're taking our land. We don't like things that you did to us or attacks that you did. There's many different ways that could have been done, even, warlike and this and that there, but just not to that barbaric level, right? Because they've already shown that they do things irrationally like that. Why should anybody expect them to make rational further steps in the near future? So they might make totally irrational based decisions. I mean, who would have thought they'd be flying in on paragliders or whatever it was, or, and driving in on motorcycles to a music concert to start doing all the stuff that they did? I mean, that's the craziest thing you could ever think of. That's what I mean. It's not like a normal, expectable, predictable, rational type of planning, obviously, that they do. It's irrational. So the only problem with that is it makes it harder to predict. So in all reality, they could just pull out nuclear weapons. Iran had nuclear facilities. They're developing it. There's word that they're developing nuclear weapons for years. Israel attacked and destroyed some of their nuclear network and facilities. The word is nobody knows if Iran officially ever made nuclear weapons. But I mean, even if they did, they could have acquired them even on a black market from other nations. On black markets, tons of crazy stuff is acquired. I mean, there's gangsters in America, for heaven's sake, and in a lot of other countries that have rocket launchers and all sorts of stuff. I mean, you go down to South America, without naming what countries, I mean, they have all sorts of military grade weapons. If you're a nation and not just a gang, or, like a political, religious, whatever movement within a nation, if it's not like the ruling party or whatever the case may be in each of these different opposing nations that oppose Israel, right? But you see my point, right? I forgot where I was going with that. But anyways, sometimes I waffle too much. But what I was getting to is the nuclear topic, right? Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. But what I was saying is that, oh yeah, because of the black market, right? So if you're a big, powerful like nation and not just a little gang, it would be you could acquire even worse things on a black market. Right? There might be maybe some old nuclear missiles or bombs that some nation secretly made, and they've been sold on the black market for like $100 million or something crazy. I don't know, and they could get hold of things like that. So you can never rule it out. I'm just throwing out reasonable possibilities, right? So people can't just in their minds rule out, oh, they will never make a nuclear attack. They do irrational attacks. They do overzealous, over violent, overly barbaric attacks. They still have babies held hostage, right? For heaven's sake. I mean, come on. You know what I mean? Not even adults, but babies. I mean, and you want to talk about rational? So nobody can rule out that they could launch a nuclear attack. Um, so, I mean, what can I say? I don't know what to say. They could also have one thing nobody is considering is, I mean, if they're that sophisticated, I don't think they could have developed these themselves, but again, through black markets and stuff, they may have acquired all sorts of these other weapons that have existed for decades that the average person in the public is oblivious to, even though they're public knowledge on public record. There's all sorts of laser, microwave, scalar, EM weapons that have existed for decades that are very devastating. You also have rail guns. There's all sorts of things that exist out there, from less to more fantastic, that have been used and built and designed and used by at least a few militaries in the world, and they're on public record and knowledge for decades, but nobody ever talks about them when war is discussed, right? So they could also come out with something like that. We don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know if Iran has satellites. If they have satellites, then they could have I mean, America had HEL space-based lasers. They're not weapons, but they can be used as weapons up in space since the 1980s. This is on public record. It's a fact. They're not the only country now that has them. They're supposed to be used to shoot space rocks, but they can be pointed, in theory. One could be designed to point at the Earth and do likewise to the Earth somewhere. It's not going to be like Independence Day. It's going to be probably an invisible beam, but it could be very hot. It's full of radiation, certain type of electromagnetic radiation that would fry electrics and could melt things and stuff, but it's not going to be like a laser beam from a sci-fi movie that we know of, right? But that was decades ago, and there could be other. There's things out there that people may not even be expecting. You know, and in Islam, I'll go this far because they do in their own, you know, writings and musings. They're in Islam. I don't know if it's in hadiths or in the writings or in the Quran, but they talk about this great beast that will come out at the end of days, but it'll actually be working for Islam. Now, in the Bible, in the book of the New Testament and Revelation, the beast is described as being the enemy, right? But in Islam, it's described as working as not, you know, it's not the enemy, because Islam considers itself the right one, and that the beast is actually working for them. And some of the Muslim scholars theorize that the beast represents technology, and the way the beast is carnally described is like a giant, you know, a massive giant type creature, like a Titan-sized creature or whatnot, made up of different, you know, forms of animals, and it looks very monstrous and horrendous. And what it does is it goes around and seals everybody to confirm whether you follow, you know, you're a follower of Islam or not, essentially. And if you're not a follower of Islam, you'll get stamped with the pentagram called the Seal of Solomon on your, that they call it and term it as, on your forehead, right? And it says that they'll bless, you know, the foreheads of all the true believers, you know, obviously who believe Islam according to what they're saying, and it'll make a light shine from their forehead, and their forehead will become bright. So, I mean, they religiously teach their own. I don't know what sect within Islam believes that, or if they all do, but they believe that it's called the Daba beast, Daba, Daba. And like I said, they've argued that some scholars over there have argued that it's a technological thing. And, you know, take it one step further, just, I can't recall if somebody over there has actually said this, but it's not too far-fetched to think that if their scholars can identify the Daba beast, which helps them win their wars to, you know, essentially conquer the world and convert everybody, and to separate the, you know, the unclean, essentially, you know, that great day of reckoning, because the Daba beast, they say, comes out at the end of days. It could be a technological tool or weapon that is created by a nation. Now, this sounds a little sci-fi, like from a movie, but it's not that far-fetched. Okay, you could, you know, there could be countries out there now. I wouldn't put it past like one of the Eastern countries, like one of the Koreas or China or Japan. I mean, Japan has giant robots that sift through wreckage, like giant robots like you see from the sci-fi movies. They actually use them over there, right? Because they love robots and they want to make them like you have in the movies, and they did it, right? And these giant robots walk around and pick up stuff and move apart fallen buildings and this and that there. It would be very easy for a nation to build something like that, some giant mechanical beast or whatever. It might be airborne, it might be able to fly, that just has some very fantastic weaponry, like lasers or microwave beams or scalar weaponry, scalar EM wave weaponry. And you could have some Daba beast, the mechanical construction, to be, come out of nowhere, come out of left field. If somebody did that, that thing could, in theory, fly around the world, destroy things, do what it wants, and people be looking at it like it's something that has superpowers, because it's using weapons that, although our public knowledge, nobody ever talks about them, right? It's not going to be launching missiles. It doesn't need to. It could just blast invisible beams, right? Things like that. That's my point. Now, I know that's far-fetched, fantastic, but the only reason I mention it is because the Bob Beast mentioned, and a lot of the scholars think that it's technological, right? And it wouldn't be far-fetched for someone in that mode of thinking, the opponent of Israel way of thinking, that, oh, we could use this Dabab beast ideology to construct a weapon that resembles the Dabab beast in its form and function. And just as the Dabab beast is said to go around and separate the believers from the unbelievers, that's what this thing could be used for. So, little, I'm not saying it's going to be that, but I'm just saying we should consider all things, right? It could be a nuclear attack. It could be something, a surprise, completely out of the box left field, like I just described. It could be something like that. It could be another ground attack mainly. It could be more of the same old. It could be that as well. But we have to be prepared for anything that could happen, because it could be anything. Now, even though that far-fetched scenario sounds real far-fetched, it would actually be pretty beneficial for them, because if they were to do that, there would be a very long period where no nation would really know who to blame, because it's not an army. It's a construct, a machine that moves around or flies around. It's got no insignia on it. It just does what it wants. And heaven forbid they have access to UAP technology, but I would just assume they don't. I mean, if they had that type of technology, they would have already won the war. Unless they have like one craft they're waiting to pull out at the last second, like, oh, something that they worked on. Maybe a UAP crashed in Iran in the last few years. They kept it secret. Somehow, maybe they kidnapped some other scientists and got them to back engineer, because I don't think they could do it themselves. But maybe they have like one special craft, you know what I mean, reserved. Maybe that's going to be their Dabah beast. But don't put anything past. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Russia one day, or China, or either of the Koreas came out, I'm just giving random examples, and said, oh, we have built, for the last few decades and tested them, and now we're just going to reveal it, like how they do with, say, jet fighters in different nations now, right? Oh, we've unveiled the new jet fighter or the stealth bomber, but it was secret for a long time, like the SR-71 Blackbird they worked on in the 1940s. Most people don't know that. While there were prop planes flying around in the world wars, they were building the SR-71 Blackbird, which is the highest flying, the fastest flying plane on the Earth to date, almost 100 years later. But they were building it back in the 1940s. It was called the A model, A18 or something like that. There's a few different models that they worked on. But that's just an example of superior craft that is almost 100 years old now, that America developed, was secret for decades, and then they declassified it. Its true top speed and altitude that it can fly at is still classified. That's how advanced it is. It's still to this day classified. They don't tell you the actual number and limit. So my point is that's a tangible, real example of how these enemy nations could have something up their sleeve. It's not impossible. And I'll give America and Israel credit. They've probably already thought of this. Obviously, if I would assume they know their stuff. They've probably considered that already, and they might be prepared in their own way as well. Maybe they're waiting to see who's going to pull it out of the sleeve first, if you catch the drift. But nonetheless, I think we should be prepared for everything. It might just be a same old sticks and stones, missiles and knives type thing. Might not be nuclear. I mean, nobody wants it to go nuclear. There's no point to that. But like I was saying before, they're not rational. They might just get angry and just smash the button and launch some old, 70s era nuclear bunk warhead and drop it somewhere. I wouldn't put it past them. They might even have like one of the kamikaze missions, right? some crazy guy driving down the sandy road in a truck with some big atom bomb in the back from like the 1950s. You know what I mean? He's just going to be driving in towards Israel somewhere. I wouldn't even put something ignorant like that past them. But they got something planned, right? And you have to think about it from their perspective too, right? They've been complaining for so long, that Israel's been occupying and taking their land and this and that there. And, people have killed each other on both sides. I'm not going to deny that. And death in war is never, good or justified. So, I'm not ignoring that Israel has, when they go to war, do whatever, others have been killed. I'm not going to deny that, right? And I'm not saying it's right that anybody died. It's bad when anybody dies on either side. That's how I feel. But in either case, where is it going with this point again? But anyways, I just think we all need to be sensible and prepared because something like this could escalate very, very quickly. And I think most of the world is just oblivious. So anyways, I won't take up any more time for people, 25 minutes. I have some more time to make some more videos. But anyways, everybody take care. Stay strapped, keep your seatbelts on, and just be prepared in case something breaks out in the world. So, but anyways, take care, folks. Yeah, I don't really think anybody will use nuclear, but if they get angry and irrational enough, they could. But one nuclear bomb is not going to destroy the world. It would take thousands of nuclear missiles to destroy the world. But it would poison things, and that would spread, and on a global scale, would slightly poison things in the world, but only to a tiny degree. It actually takes a lot of nuclear, warheads to have a wide effect. Even the spread out toxic effect. Thankfully, that's how it is. And I highly doubt. I mean, they might launch one or something like that, but I highly doubt they're going to be using tons and tons of them. And I doubt they'll use any nuclear, to be honest, because it would irradiate the land that they want to live in. So that wouldn't make any sense. But that's what I was saying before. I think they'll probably just do a ground-based attack when it's talking about Jerusalem and certain places in Israel. That's what I think. It's just the most logical solution. I mean, after all, what we're going by, when they attacked Israel in October 7th, they didn't use missiles. They've launched missiles at certain areas of Israel since then. But anyways, all right, so take care.